I'm so excited that we have Innovate Digital Solutions as a sponsor of heCast this season. Innovate Digital Solutions provides anything that an office might need. Hardware, software, IT, copy machines, things like that. They make an office run more smooth. And they're really good at it. But one of the things that I love about Innovate, their founders, Andre and Katia Brasso, they're people that don't just believe it's important to build a strong business, but also to take that success and build a strong community around them. They really have a heart for what HeChangedIt is doing. People they love have gone through some of the stuff that we talk about on this show. Andre and Katia both believe that you can build a life worth living, and there are these evidence-based solutions that can help build that life. We're so excited to be in partnership with Innovate Digital Solutions, and HeChangedIt is better for it, and we hope you will be too. Go to innovate.ca and check them out. Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of HeChangedIt. As always, I am Mike Chisholm. As always, I am really excited to have conversations about and around the idea of men's mental wellness. If you haven't downloaded the HeChangedIt app yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Go to HeChangedIt.com. You can check out the vision of the company. You can download the app. It's a free download. It's free, and it's got good stuff. Free good stuff. Go get it. Go get the free good stuff. HeChangedIt.com. Check it out. One of the things that we have talked about, and of course, I think common sense, but also, we just know that a big part of our mental wellness has to do with our physical wellness. And so that's why this season we have dedicated a few episodes to some ways to get physically fit and are talking to experts about that. We have another trainer on today. Now, before we get into anything when it comes to talking around the ways of physical fitness, we want to have a disclaimer, throw the disclaimer out there. Obviously, every body is different. Everybody's different and every body is different. Go talk to your healthcare professional. Make sure, don't just take what we're saying as gospel, because your situation might be a little bit different than where Brian is coming from. Now, Brian Gryn is a world-class trainer. He's an author. He's got a podcast, the Eat Clean, Get Lean podcast. And then also the Stepladder System. You can go to stepladdersystem.com to look at his book, ways to rearrange or to help your physical fitness without rearranging your life completely. Really excited about that he has taken time out of his day to come on here and let me pick his brain. And I did that for like an hour. I picked his brain just about different modalities when it comes to physical fitness, just his standpoint on some of the fads that have come and gone throughout time. And we had a really good conversation about how our physical health can affect our mental health. And they are related. They really are. And, at the end of the day, let's get some activity going. He has a really cool idea about the idea of just upgrading our activity. Whatever our activity level is right now, just upgrade it. And I think that's really good food for really good thought. Thank you very much for joining us on this HeChangedIt ride right now. heCast, the official podcast of HeChangedIt, is proud to present our episode with Brian Gryn. I am so excited that you have taken time out of your schedule to be on heCast today. Okay, so let me ask you this. What do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy hosting the podcast, or do you enjoy doing inspiring people to make change? Or are they both one and the same for you?
Yeah, I would say they're both one and the same. I mean, I enjoy both aspects. I like interviewing individuals and like finding out about their story and what sort of affected them and brought them to this point. But I also enjoy, it never hurts to talk. Sometimes when you're always the one interviewing and you're asking questions, sometimes it's nice to get on a podcast and actually talk about things that, are in your life and that can help others. So
what do you call yourself from a coach standpoint? How do you describe what you do?
It's a great question. I mean, it's evolved over the years.
Yeah.
I would say, health coach / trainer. I mean, I do a bit of both. So
it's one of those things where, and we've had a couple of different episodes recently that have focused on the physical element of our health and our wellness. It seems like everybody knows the answer, or at least knows the common sense. Well, yeah, physical activity, the right physical activity, it enhances our life. It enhances our life in so many ways. Why is it so difficult for people to make the jump and to actually jump into that pool?
Well, I mean, I think with a lot of the individuals that I work with, they've had these habits that have been going on, like that aren't serving them for a long period of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the longer you have these habits that aren't serving you, the tougher it is to get out of them and make change. And that's why I think it is important to like hire a coach, because we all need coaches in most aspects of our life, especially aspects that we're trying to improve. So I think, to answer your question, I just think it's tough to change habits. It's tough to, like yeah. So I think that's the biggest reason why people just have a difficult time moving on and trying something else.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is something that's almost universal. That any of us, no matter what walk of life we come from, or what geographical region, in fact, that we come from, many times we can relate to the idea that we're stuck because of habits that have developed from when we were young, or perhaps as a result of something that we've gone through. We've gotten into a rut of some sort, and someone once told me a rut is a grave with the ends kicked out. It's just this never-ending, slide to an inevitable situation that you just don't want to be in. I'm super curious, what has brought you to this point? How did you evolve? Tell me your story, how you evolved into the performance coach that you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate in the sense that I was introduced to health and training and working out like early on by my parents, and so I got into that hobby when I was in high school. Started realizing
Did you grow up in Chicago?
I did, yeah,
Yeah.
north suburbs, and yeah, I was introduced early on, and it just impacted me. Initially, when out of school, I was in like the corporate world and realized that I just wanted to start helping people with their health, and dove right in. And so I don't have like a huge story in the sense that like, oh, I lost 100 pounds and now I'm sharing it with the world. It was more, it's affected my life in such a positive, avenue that I just try to help others and bring them, the results that they're looking for. So, it's just, I was lucky to be introduced early on. I think that played a role in just sort of creating this solid foundation that has allowed me to continue today. So
how were you introduced to it? Was it like, parents always had a gym membership, and just the moment you turned a certain age, you started going with them? Like how were you introduced to this?
Yeah, they actually went to like this small studio gym. It was called Premier Fitness. It's still around actually. And I ended up actually working for the owner when I got out of college initially a bit. So it was like something when I was 17, 18, they were going to, and then they're like, well, you should come with us. And then I started going with them. And then it's just sort of, that's how it blossomed.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, it is. It's so good. Like, I mean, I know some people that get introduced to fitness, tangentially, because, they go into team sports or things like that. They don't necessarily hit it head on. What kind of, and I mean, there's so many modalities now when it comes to the different segments, that health, physical health encompasses. Is there a certain discipline that you kind of gravitate towards? Weight, strength training, functional training. Like what's your take on physical fitness?
Yes. I mean, I've gravitated towards just strength training. I think like the word functional is thrown out a lot, but like I think it's sort of like this word that people like to attach to a lot of things. But I think like I'm a golfer. If you just get stronger in general, like it is going to help with golf. Like I know there's a lot of like golf exercises, and yes, there's certain things that you can do that might help with golf, but like I think just in general, especially as like a middle-aged individual, like guy or girl, like building strength should be like your number one, I think should be your number one goal. And then if you want to, unless you're like specializing in something, let's just say you're playing tennis every week and you want to improve certain things with that, then you can sort of stem off from that. But I just think for general population, strength training is something that everyone should put at the the forefront of what they're doing.
You brought up the middle age thing. I was going to get to that. As you as your career and your track sort of evolved, one of the things you started specializing in are guys our age, our older guys, the middle aged guys, I should say. The ones who we still kind of feel like we're 19 in so many ways, but our body tells us otherwise. Was it the fact that you were getting older and you were seeing some of these things? What was it that made you make the decision to move into kind of that direction?
Yeah, I have to say that. Yeah, I mean, I'm 43.
Yeah.
I guess you could say I'm middle aged. I don't consider myself middle aged.
I know you fight it every step of the way, don't we?
So I think that's what sort of led me down that path, because when I first started in this business, I've been doing it for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
You just sort of work with who needs work. I worked with a lot of younger kids, like college kids and beyond. And I just think as I got a little bit into my late 30s and 40s, I could just relate with obviously people that are around my age, and and I felt like in order to make the biggest impact, a lot of times these individuals, suddenly they have beer bellies and they've had families and they've had responsibilities and things that have come up. And it's not like training a 24-year-old where you could do almost anything with. You have to sort of walk a line with, in older individuals, or I should say middle-aged individuals. And I felt like I could relate with that. So that was like what sort of led me down that path.
In that 20 years, have you noticed any patterns? And that's a big question. So let's kind of get really let's get granular on a couple of patterns you might have noticed. The first one I want to sort of talk about, because there's a lot of guys out there that, again, we know the right answer. We know some physical fitness is going to help our lives. I mean, we've heard it so many times. We understand. We see the evidence all over the place. I assume that you've seen some mental some mental patterns and things like that. And then I want to know about some physical patterns as well, that some commonalities that you've seen through the width and breadth of what it is that you've done over the years.
Yes. I mean, as far as like the mental side, and I think with males, sometimes it's not addressed enough, is the fact that, they get into these bad habits and they start like almost identifying themselves as a certain way. And
labeling.
Yeah, labeling.
The narrative that we tell ourselves.
Exactly.
Yep.
I actually just interviewed a guy. It's not published yet on my podcast, but we talked all about like this sort of self-sabotage that goes on. And
that's common. You find that's common?
I do find it's fairly common on some different scales for different people. Sometimes it's very subtle and they don't even realize it. Other times, like I'm on a call with them and they keep calling themselves like the fat guy, sort of, like it's like very obvious that he's just been sabotaging his subconscious the whole time, or how many years this has been going on for.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that was like, something I initially, like, I didn't deal with that when I was working with younger individuals as much. It still goes on, but I started to see that pattern increase more and more.
So, okay. And what are some of the more subtle ones? Like, do you see that as you're working out with somebody? You'll hear something that they say, and what do you do to try and correct that? Is it just an awareness thing? And then, or do you have exercises that you kind of, do you bring it to their attention?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that's why you're hired as a coach, is to, cause sometimes family or friends, they might not say anything or bring it up because maybe they're used to hearing it. And two, maybe they don't want to feel like they're hurting you, or, so I think as a coach, you want to bring up anything that you find is sort of, self-deprecating or not sort of serving their purpose. And so they come to you because they want to get out of a rut. Well, yeah, I can tell them what to do if it's, virtually, or I can work with them one-on-one. But like, they have to like sort of buy in themselves. And so part of that buy-in is sort of believing that they can get to a certain point.
what causes the buy-in? Is it a matter of hitting a rock bottom and sick and tired of being sick and tired? Is it a matter of you being able to paint the picture and saying, okay, we're going to take you from here to here, and here's how it's going to feel? How do you help people with that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people, and it's sort of sad, but sometimes people do wait till like it's sort of a rock bottom situation. Others are maybe a little bit more proactive and realize that either maybe it runs in their family, maybe like heart disease runs in their family, or they're starting to see signs of sort of lack of confidence in their body, or in the way they feel, and they catch that early on, and they're like, I just can see myself going down this road, and I don't want to go down this road.
Yep.
So I think it depends, but yes, it could be either family history or something that they sort of starting to realize over the years that they've sort of put their health on the back burner, and now they want to sort of make a change and put themselves first.
Yeah. It's funny when Candy and her team, as they were building HeChanged, as they were 5 years ago doing a lot of the research before they started, actually building of the company, one of the things that they did was identify many of the pain points that men are feeling. and one of the major ones, one near the top of the list, like loneliness and purpose are kind of near the top. Number 2 or number 3, and I gotta ask her, I gotta look at it again, but body image is a massive one. And we talk all the time about the idea that and it's stereotypical, but I think the stereotype also has basis in reality. I think about my wife and her girlfriends, and many times they go out and they'll be sitting down at a patio, and they'll literally be comparing their bodies to each other, to all the women that walk by, all of the and it might not just be the bodies, but that's a huge part. They talk about this if they get it out. Whereas I think the stereotype, and rightfully so, is many times guys feel these things, but they put it inside. They don't talk about it a lot. I'm super curious about your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think nowadays, even with social media, obviously, I think it's become more to the forefront. Everyone looks like their best on Instagram. It's actually interesting. I've gotten sort of off Instagram because partly because I got a new phone and I can't get back on it. So I'm like, what, this is actually could be a blessing in disguise. Like I can't log in. Like, okay, this has been 2 weeks and I don't really miss it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But anyways.
No.
Yeah.
You dig the break. I understand that because that's the comparative thing, right?
Yeah.
But what are you comparing to? You're comparing to artificial because people are putting up pictures of their best selves or whatever. Never mind the fact that we've got technology helping us with filters and all of that kind of crap, right? Right. So I can totally understand. But even growing up, I can remember, really close friends of mine who would confide in me almost like it was a state secret of some sort, that they feel like they're too skinny, or they feel like they're too big, or they feel like they're, that comparison that you're talking about, it's a major thing, isn't it?
It is. And I do agree with your point, Mike, that a lot of guys won't say anything. Like even the guys that I'm working with, they won't say anything about, I mean, they'll be like, oh, I'd love to lose 10 to 15 pounds or get to this % body fat or whatever it is.
Yep.
Sort of thrown out maybe metric. But that's not like, I should say like if I'm hanging around my friends and stuff, like a lot of them won't say anything about that stuff. So I think it is sort of this like people don't talk about it. And I know this is totally off topic, but like,
go off topic, no problem.
Yeah, my wife and I, like, she's going through IVF, right? So, and no one talks about IVF until like you start bringing it up, and then everyone has done IVF. Like the same, it's just like, yeah, it's the same type of thing with like, your body image and how you feel about it. Like until you bring it up, like no one talks about it.
Well, and I think that's a great point. Part of the reason HeCast exists is because there have been all sorts of topics where our goal is to let the pressure out of the balloon a little bit because the balloon's about to burst.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people out there that have these common things that are just below the surface, and we don't talk about it. And I think that the IBF example is a beautiful one, and it's exactly where many men sit. Whether it's stigma, whether it's this generational, it could be it is in our DNA. Where we hold back on a lot of these things, but that holding back has a consequence, and the consequence is our health. And there's so many ways that our health can go. It can get hinky and go sideways, and then suddenly we're in a world of trouble. I'm curious, when you sit down with people and you take them on as a client, is there a percentage of them that are saying it's a cosmetic deal versus it's a health, it's a lifestyle thing, or is it always both the same?
I think they've probably come to me in one or two ways. One, they realize like that their body's changing and they don't like the way they look. Or two, like someone has said, maybe a doctor has been like, oh, this has been going up, and or your blood pressure or this, or like maybe you should start doing a lot of health professionals, I know they mean well, but they'll just say the sort of the same motto, right? Like you should exercise and eat better. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Like, but at least sometimes when you hear it from a health professional, that it like moves you to or to action. Or like I've had a client who maybe he failed a stress test.
Yep.
And so a lot of times I find with males, it could be like an external sort of voice that's telling them something, but there are guys who've come to me that just feel like enough's enough and they just want to make a change.
Yeah. What do you is there a difference between training guys in their 20s and 30s versus their 40s and 50s?
Yes. Yes and no. I think that a lot of guys you can do a lot that you like. I'll just speak up for my own. Like, I feel like I can do a lot that I did back then.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing, the difference between being in your 20s and being in your 40s is recovery. I think
Okay.
I think allowing yourself to recover and being more cognizant of that process. When you're in your 20s, not that you don't need to recover, but you just recover quicker and you could bounce back, and you're like, you don't even think about it. It's like second nature. But when you're in your 40s, you have to be real cognizant of that and make sure that you're getting sufficient enough recovery to come back and have a great workout.
In your opinion, say you're working a certain muscle group, what is sufficient recovery? What is it? Is it a feeling? Is there a way you can articulate it systematically? What is adequate recovery in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and it could mean a little bit different for different individuals. But I think giving yourself enough time to recover would be like, let's just say you do an upper body workout. It obviously depends on the modality and the intensity of that workout and sort of the rep range. But in general, like I would say 2 days from that workout is just a good sort of rule of thumb. There's some people who can do a total body workout one day and then come back and do it again, but they're probably doing a lighter volume. So it sort of depends on the type of workout, the intensity, and then also too, like a big thing with recovery is sleep. Right. So if you're not getting adequate sleep quality, then it's going to take a toll on your workouts and your recovery. And so that's probably the biggest sort of like pillar of health that we really focus on for recovery.
Have you ever come across guys who view sleep as the enemy? And it's like, no, I want to be awake. I got all these things. They wear the badge of honor. I sleep 4 hours a night, 5 hours a night. Have you run into people like that? And if so, what do you say to them?
Yeah, I do. And I've had clients who were like, they used to trade night, like trade during the middle of the night, like the euro or like the Japanese market. And so sleep was very difficult, and they were sleeping during the day. it's amazing how that can just throw everything off, right? Like your eating patterns. I mean, it's got to be one of the more, if you're working in the middle of the night, I mean, obviously if this is what you need to do, you need to do it. But I could really see it take a toll on everything, stress, workouts, and everything. So yes, I mean, I think recovery is being talked about more, and sleep is being brought up so much more that people are understanding that they have to prioritize it. But yes, there's plenty of people out there who don't. And I think as you get older, you're going to realize that you really do need to prioritize it.
You talk about these habits that people bring in and whatnot. It feels like a big part of what you have to do is kind of rewire things for folks to get them in this position, including like for me, I'll tell you this. I started working out again regularly maybe last July. So it's at the time of this recording, we're not even a year yet. And I'll tell you the motivation of it. I have a granddaughter. She is the most amazing little creature in my entire life. I adore her more than anything. And when I noticed around the time that when she turned 4, keeping up with her on the playground was it was getting difficult. I was getting winded. I was getting, and that became kind of my motivation when I was in the gym. And I noticed almost immediately, within a month, I noticed within a month that I had a little bit more game in the park with her, and now I am keeping up with her, and I am leaping over things that because of her size she can just lightly go through and whatnot. And because of my size, it's not as simple. It's a higher step for me, and it's different. And that has given kind of a renewed sort of vigor towards it and a new perspective towards it. When you have people who sit down with you and they come to you because their doctor says to do it, or they're feeling, the cosmetic thing, they feel, a little bit of fat or, whatever it is. Do you notice a change in them along the way as they start to do it? As they start to do it, they realize these benefits and their character changes, and some of these changes happen. And as the trainer, are there markers that you see in some of these stories?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think one of the big things, especially initially starting out, like you mentioned, you started out in July or whatever, is creating momentum, right? Creating momentum, creating some wins early on, I think is really important. So a lot of times with clients, even if it's just a matter of like, oh, last week we did this and now we went up to this weight. So they, in their mind, they're like, oh, okay, I'm getting stronger. And that's just building confidence and creating this sort of snowball effect. So for sure, I think that is a goal early on, is like this, I call it in my my system is like a small change, big result master plan, where you're sort of identifying like these major culprits, these low hanging things that could be taken out, maybe not easily, but that are sort of like glaring things that can be sort of squashed and create the biggest impact to create momentum.
Yeah, simple isn't necessarily easy,
No,
right? Like those two things, people think of them as synonyms, but they're not necessarily. Like what you teach is simple, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's easy for people. You talk about your system. You've talked about your podcast a little bit. I want to go deeper into that. Let's talk about your podcast. Let's plug your podcast first. Let's talk about that, and then I want to go into your system.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started my podcast. I'm not sure when you guys started, but I started when it was like right around COVID time.
Yeah,
and
we started in 2020. That's when we started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So and it's been great. I mean, I've met a ton of people. I've initially was doing interviews, and now I continue to do interviews, but now I do a small micro podcast every week where I'll just touch on. It'll be maybe a 10-minute episode where I'll touch on a different topic, or something that I could just sort of go off. Maybe it might be a point that came up during the interview before.
Yep.
So it's the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast, and yeah, it's just sort of taking a life of its own. I think I've like 340 episodes around there.
Yeah. Oh man, that's fantastic. And where's it available? Is it available everywhere? Is it on YouTube as well? Is it available? And where's the best place? How do you find it?
Yeah. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. It's probably on Google Podcasts. It's on, I think, almost every listening platform. And then I do. Yeah, I've been doing YouTube since pretty much the start. So I enjoy that as well, because it's funny to see my initial episodes compared to how it is now.
Oh, I can relate to that. I host this podcast and another one, and boy, I can relate. Even both of them, it is painful. But I find it important. I don't know about you. I find it important though, every once in a while, to go back and look at the painful stuff. And I think there's probably a bigger lesson in there. It's probably that relates to the physical fitness as well. Are you a believer in progress pictures along the way? Because I mean, I look at some of the old podcasts that I did, and it's like, okay, I was terrible. There was things that, I cringe constantly. And number one, it gives me perspective as to where we are now. And number two, it also gives me reminders of where I don't want to be and habits that I don't want to go back to. I mean, it's pretty much a glaring comparison here on the physical side of things as well. Are you a believer in like progress pictures and things? Is that part of your system?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we do like what's called a DEXA scan on most clients, and that sort of just gives you lean body mass, body fat percentage. Like breaks it up by body part. I mean, it's pretty in depth. Some of the information is necessary, some of it's not, but it just gives
how do you do the
sort
scan? Like, what's the scan? What entails that in that?
Yeah, the DEXA scan is you literally just lay down. And then it just like scans you. It takes probably 5-6 minutes to do, and yeah, it's known as probably one of the gold standards when it comes to measuring lean mass and body fat percentage, and it also gives you your bone mass as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good place to just know, okay, this is where I'm at, and sort of build a baseline from there.
That's really, really cool. So you start with a scan, that kind of a thing. Do you give, talk about your system, with people, maybe why it might be different, but also, some fundamentals that might get guys excited, about making a decision and maybe reaching out to you or whatever, making a decision to change their life. Let's talk about your system a little bit.
Yeah. So, gosh, it's a 6-month program that I work with individuals. And yeah, we start with just creating clarity, building a baseline, like I talked about, figuring out really like honing in on their why, and then, doing DEXA scans and some other things, before and after pictures, and then before pictures, I should say. And then from there, we talked about already, like small wins, right? So we create small wins with people, really focus on that early on. And then we get into, just normal things that, everyone should attempt to integrate, which is an activity upgrade. There are individuals who come to me who are already working out, but we sort of take what they're doing and try to, maybe make it more efficient, or, I think the big thing with activity upgrade is consistency. So if they're not consistently doing it, then something needs to be changed. So we focus on that. A lot of times you can get work done within 20-30 minutes. You don't need an hour and a half. So because a lot of the people that I'm working with are, they're just busy, right? It's a little bit different when you're in your 40s or 50s and you have responsibilities, as opposed to being in your 20s, like you asked before.
Yeah.
You do have more time when you're in your 20s.
Absolutely.
And then, we get into sleep and, stress management's another one. We build a sleep routine. If stress is something that's a big sort of component, then we really get into just creating some type of sort of way to downregulate the system. And this could be a meditation or maybe a yoga practice. And then nutrition and meal timing are sort of obviously big pillars as well. And, I'm not like dogmatic on one way of eating. I've learned a lot through having a podcast and just being in this environment that there's a lot of ways to get it done.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like the golf swing, because I'm a golfer. Like, you'll see a lot of different swings on tour, and it's just about sort of owning and what works for you, and just taking ownership of that. So same thing with, I think, eating. I don't think there's a perfect way to eat, but certain individuals, sort of can be steered toward a certain way that'll sort of meet their needs. So yeah, and we just make sure we go through all those and focus on really the ones that need the most, the ones that that need the most, I would say, what's the word I'm trying to think, just time and effort, and we focus on that for the 6 months, and go from there.
What if you have somebody who's sitting? I know that everybody is different, and every body is different. I get that totally. But you kind of on a macro level, when you look at somebody in 6 months, what are some of the goals in your mind that you would have for this person were they to follow your instructions? Is it is it inches? Is it depend on everybody? Is it a weight thing? What are some of the markers that you look for?
Well, I mean, I think that obviously having lean mass is important.
Yeah.
I don't think for example, obviously we don't want to have a ton of visceral fat around our waist, which is a very common theme for a lot of individuals.
Absolutely.
Very stubborn belly fat, right?
Yeah.
But it can be difficult to sort of get rid of. Obviously, we're not going to get rid of it, but it's something you want to keep an eye on. But I don't think there's a lot more to health than just, okay, this is how much I weigh, right?
Yes.
Like
thank you for
there
saying
are
this.
people who are skinny who are not healthy, right? You talk about even So I think that just the way you look is just a small segment of everything else that's going on. Like how's your libido?
Mm-hmm.
How's your mental health? How's your sleep quality? Hair growth, hormonal, hormones, cortisol, and so on and so forth. So I think it's one sort of avenue or one pillar, but it's not the end all. That's for sure. Just looking at how the body is.
See, these markers that you're talking about, I think that there are people who, when they hear that, there are guys who hear that would start to buy into some of this stuff. How's your libido? How's your stress level? How's your cortisol? If these things, if your goal as a trainer is within 6 months, that these are the markers that start to improve in your life, well, that sounds like a better life in all sorts of areas, and not just cosmetically, but it sounds like it really, really gets into the core of how we can improve, how health can improve. I want to talk about some of the your opinion on some of the platitudes that are out there. There's a lot of people who think, oh yeah, cardio is the way to go, and I mean, I think that there's an equal number of people who would look at that and really, really have something to say in opposition to that statement. There are doctors who will say, oh yeah, 30 minutes of activity a day, that's all you need. But is it just 30 minutes of activity? Is it the right activity? If somebody is inactive a lot, would going for a 30-minute walk every day, would that help their health in your opinion? I'm super curious about some of these, getting a little bit more granular on this now.
Yeah. So I think it's important to understand what have you done in the past and what is your goal, right? Because
this is the upgrade part you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, you can take a very untrained individual and have them walk once a day for 30 minutes, and it can make a big impact on their health. I actually just did a micro podcast on how there was a study recently showing that once you get past 4,000 steps, you can actually, there could be if you go for every 1,000 steps on top, I'm trying to say this, every 1,000 steps on top of that, you can actually make an impact on testosterone, and there could be a slight increase in testosterone. So I mean, again, this was one study, and I'm not hailing walking is the only way to help increase testosterone, but it's just showing the fact that, you can take an untrained individual, have them walk and get and make a huge impact in their life.
Yep.
On the opposite end, you can have a very trained individual, someone that's been doing something for a while, and they're looking to tweak a certain way or upgrade and improve. And well, having them walk is just not going to really do anything that much. But I will say I do love implementing walking with 99 with all my clients, really, as because it's something that I've really done with my life. I mean, I have dogs, and we go at least about 2-3 walks a day, and not only just the walking, but it's low impact. Takes the excuses out for the most part, right? And you're getting sunlight and hopefully getting some vitamin D, which so you're sort of doing one thing that sort of takes care of a lot of other things that can make an impact.
Yeah, that's great. Now, also, if anybody has ever gotten a membership at a gym, Most gyms that have a decent amount of size to them, if they've got a decent footprint, I've seen it in multiple gyms throughout. I've grown up in one city, and I've been at multiple gyms throughout my life, and every single one of them has had it. It's one of those things. It feels like it's for the self starter, people who just go and get the membership, and they don't necessarily go and get a coach or whatever. You see the circuit. Oh yeah, you can do the circuit in 30 minutes. You can go and you do these exercises in 30 minutes and you're done. Do that every single day. What do you think about that?
I will tell you this. I've actually changed my tune a little bit on just machines in general.
Yeah.
I think growing up, lifting weights and stuff in my 20s and beyond, I was like, oh, I don't want to do a seated bench press or seated, row or like not just sitting, but like actually on the machine itself. I think it can play. I think like doing that can make an impact, and it's been shown that even doing a chest press on just like a seated machine can be just as effective as building muscle as actually doing it on a bench press. And I think too, like you have to be a little bit cognizant, especially as you get older, because when you introduce imbalance during certain exercises, that you got to make sure that you are structurally sound.
Right.
I mean, even just the aspect of doing like like just say a barbell squat, with even a light load. A lot of people, they don't necessarily have what it takes to do that. They're dysfunctional in one way or the other, and that's not a knock. I mean, everyone's got some dysfunction, but
sure.
Putting load on a bench on either a normal bench or dumbbell squat rack is really not for a lot of people. So I think it's a good place to start for sure. But also too, I'm an experienced, lifter. I've added it actually back in just to sort of, mix it up and keep it, sort of like,
you took the words out of my mouth because, I've met a lot of trainers just throughout my life. And one of the key aspects seems to be changing things up. And I wanted to ask you, if you sit down with someone for 6 months and they follow you, I'm just saying, if they're coachable, if they, I'm certain that you run into a whole bunch of, starters and restarters, people who don't necessarily follow, but I'm talking about the people who follow. In that 6 months, how many times are you changing up the routine?
That's a good question. And I would say that we probably start changing things once they get to a certain point, or almost like a plateau to some degree.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think you need to change it up every week, every 2 weeks, even every month. I think if you're, let's say you've implemented something over the 2 to 3 month span, and you just found that like it's becoming maybe somewhat boring, and you sort of plateau, so it's sort of like a feeling. I don't think there's like, oh, after this amount you should then change it up. Like I've kept workouts going. There's certain favorites that I have for myself that I've done for a long period of time, but I think if you start feeling bored, then you might want to change it up, because that's the whole, you want to go in there and feel like somewhat invigorated and wanting to do stuff. And when you start getting bored, then, you might have to do something else.
Okay. Well, the physical body gets bored too, right? Like, because it kind of needs to be shocked sometimes to get back to that place of oh man, I really know that I worked out yesterday. Obviously when you start working out, you feel that. I always, I know what it's like. I've done it, and I've started and stopped enough times in my life to know it's not day one after the first workout. It's day two. Day two is the bad day. And when you can get through the bad day, you can get through day two, it's going to be okay. But then obviously you get the routine going, and you don't really feel that day one, day two thing anymore. You get to the point where it becomes routine, literally. But then it's important would you say it's important to shock the system every once in a while to get back to that place where, oh yeah, okay, whether it's a different type of chest exercise, a different type of something that just gets to a different place in the muscle?
Yeah, I mean, I think most importantly is, you have these different levers that you can pull on to create growth, right? And so that could be rep range, and that could be weight, the load that you're putting on yourself, or it could be the type of exercise that you're doing, the variability in the exercise. So I think it just depends where you're at. But but yeah, like even just progressing a little bit one way or the other. Let's say last time, and this is one thing that I do talk a lot about, and I used to not as much, is tracking progress and just making a note of where you're at. Like I for years I never recorded my workouts, and now for the last probably 6 to 8 months I've been recording 90% of my workouts just to get a feel for where I'm at. And it's like, oh, okay, like you just forget sometimes, and like you have an idea where you're at, but until you actually write it down, then you can sort of progress from that.
Okay, so you bring up a very, very cool point. I mean, I've heard from so many wellness coaches and personal coaches how important journaling is, and I mean, I never understood it until I started doing it. I never got it, and sometimes the hardest part is the actual starting. That's the creating of a new habit, whatever. Oh, I'm terrible at journaling. Like all these narratives we tell ourselves along the way. You bring up. I see the guys in the gym all the time with their little notepad and they're, writing it down. Some of them are doing it on their phone, whatever it is. Right. You would that's a great, great point you just brought up there. How important in your mind is that if somebody wants to take their health seriously, how important is tracking progress and actually physically doing it? And do you have any tips for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I do think it's really important because it sort of allows you to understand where you're at, and then how you can progress from that. And also what it does too, like sort of from a mental standpoint, which we talked about already, is creating wins, right? Like if you can create these wins, even if it's 2.5 pounds that you added on each side, like whatever, last time you or it's you last time you did 8 reps, now you did 10. Those wins, that creates momentum, that builds confidence, and that'll keep you going. So I do think it's really important. I've changed my tune on that from years past where I never really did that. And the one thing I was going to say was, gosh, I had an individual on my, it's funny how you have many guests and you sort of forget names, but he trains professional bodybuilders and power lifters. And one of the things they track also is their rest time between their sets. So let's say you just did 150 pounds 10 times.
Yep.
You try to keep a consistent rest in between each set, because you can, one time you rest for 2 minutes, the other time you rested for 5. Well, coming back, you're going to be able to do a lot more with that greater rest time. And so I think it just helps keep your goals and your results sort of consistent. If you're saying, okay, I'm going to rest 2.5 minutes between each one, and then the next time I do it, I'll do the same thing. And then you can sort of build from there.
Oh, that's really important, because I mean, how many times do we, go to the gym? We're trying to do what we're told to do, and then somebody comes over and sees us or something like that,
right.
and whatnot. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a recommended rest time between, for if you're working a muscle group, it's a strength training, modality or exercise of some sort? Do you have a specific amount of rest time that you would recommend between sets?
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear some differing things on this, but I would just say in general, when you're doing heavier loads and less reps, you need more rest, as opposed to doing a higher rep range, let's just say 15 to 20 and above. And it's maybe a little bit more endurance based. You don't need to rest as much. So, let's just say you're doing sets of 5 reps. I would say getting, around 3 minutes between as a rest time is probably a good place to start, and you can sort of feel it from there. So
now you bring up the high endurance, the higher reps versus the heavier loads, lower reps. What's the benefit of each one? And is it is there a one size fits all for people, or is there a time where you want to stay on the strength part or the heavy part for a while and then switch over and start doing endurance for a while? What's the benefit of each one of those?
Yeah, I think it is good to mix it up every once in a while. And if there's some days where you're just like not feeling it and you don't want to go heavier loads, which as we get older, I find that like I don't, I'm fairly careful when it comes to heavy loads. So, there might be times where I do maybe 3 to 5 reps, but I would say that, is there a perfect model? No, I think it depends on the individual and sort of how they're feeling. But once you can build muscle and do 30 reps of something like,
Yeah.
like, so I think, yes, it might build up some endurance as well. But like, if you feel like you rather be lifted in a safer environment, perhaps, and you don't have a spotter or this or that, you can do 20 plus reps and still build muscle. But I would say that every so often, sometimes it's good to create an environment where the load is a bit heavier, and that'll help build strength as well. So I think it's important to mix it up and just depend on how you're feeling as far as recovery is concerned.
And by the way, when I haven't shot the intro for this. When I shoot the intro for this, there'll be a disclaimer. Obviously, you consult your health professional. Figure out every body is different. As we've talked about here. Now let's talk about some fads. Every once in a while, you see fads in the fitness industry. Every once in a while, there's always fads in the fitness industry. They're always there. I want to talk about deadlifting for a second here, because for a while there were people out there that were really saying this is the perfect total body exercise. It is the perfect strength exercise. What are your thoughts on deadlifting?
It's interesting that you bring that one up, because I think it was a few weeks ago, I listened to a small tidbit by Stuart McGill, and he's pretty well known in the health the health industry, and pretty big name. I think he was actually talking to Peter Attia about not being a fan of deadlifts.
Yep.
And I have to say that I think his talk was geared towards like these individuals who are doing a lot of load, putting a lot of strain on their spine, and just creating a lot of stress.
Yep.
I think that for the majority of people, if they have the form correct and they're not necessarily trying to lift their house,
sure,
that you can do deadlifts in a safe manner. And I think it's a very effective exercise, and it's a very important exercise to build glute strength. And glutes are your biggest muscle, and they're your hip extenders, and which helps you get up and walk and go up and down the stairs. Don't get me wrong, you can build glute strength a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be with deadlifts, but I think deadlifts should be a staple for most people's programs.
Well, and that's actually where my question was going to be. Why are there so many people that call it like a total body exercise? Like they say that it is such an important one. You've kind of touched on that a little bit. It is really an all-around exercise in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Well, yeah. And it's, like I said, it's an important exercise from the standpoint of your glutes are your biggest muscle, and your biggest hip extenders. And if you think about it, getting up as we get older, getting up off the ground, if you're playing with your kids or grandkids, like you talked about, going through obstacle courses and stuff, and coming up and down stairs, these are important things. So yes, I mean, do you need to do crazy heavy powerlifting deadlifts? No, you could do single leg deadlifts. I really enjoy that. It's a bit of core with a bit of imbalance involved. And so, yes, there's many ways to do deadlifts, but I think that 99% of people should implement them into their lives, and as long as they're getting their form right, shouldn't have a concern.
Okay, that's a heavy endorsement right there. That's I dig them too. I think they're.
I like them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this: in the gym, from a user standpoint, and a very novice one at that, I know that I feel a little bit different with certain exercises. Like I get winded in a more, I don't know, a deeper way with certain exercises, and deadlifts is probably the top of the heap when it comes to those exercises. I feel tired in a way deeper way than I do even doing like something like a bench press or even like a pull down, a lat pull down or whatever. With a deadlift, I feel way more tired after. And I'm, I assume it's because I'm working more muscles doing it. I don't know. That's what my assumption is.
Yeah. Muscle utilization. I mean, you're recruiting like not only your glutes, but your quads, your core, like as opposed to laying on a bench and just pressing, you're recruiting muscles, but it's not, like you said, it's not the same. And I agree. I mean, that's why I'm a big fan of lower body. I think, it's sometimes it's the forgotten thing for some males, and they're top heavy. And
thank you. Yes. How important is leg day? Let's talk about that a little bit. How important is leg day? I think leg day should be
prioritize just like anything else, like sleep and, and things like that. Like, if you're skipping legs, you're skipping out. You're not only shortening, how should I say this? If you lift legs, you will become stronger at any other lift that you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Getting stronger legs means your upper body is going to get stronger. And if you want to get the bigger shoulders, the bigger arms, the bigger chest, then don't skip the legs, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so this is good. The last thing I want to kind of go into is diet, of course. I mean, you talk to some people, and I mean, there's so many different thoughts on this, that kind of a thing. But at the end of the day, guys who want abs are made in the kitchen. True statement. Is that a true thing for you, or do you think that exercise can cover it?
No, I mean, yes, I think diet. I hate to say diet, but like, I think, what you're putting in your body matters. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I think that my approach to this has changed a little bit over the years. I went through a span where I was doing a lot of fasting. I think fasting can play a role. It's a tool. I don't think it's the end all. And I don't think it's I should just say this. It's a tool. I think that one of the things that happen, especially for me, is if you overdo anything, let's just say if you're overdoing fasting, you're putting yourself sort of in this catabolic state for too long. And when you're trying to build muscle, you want to build this anabolic environment. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that, like, as far as diet is concerned, I'm a fan now of, like, I'm not like an advocate of, not to say that I think there could be benefits of like a low carb. I know that's it's a big thing. I think if you're eating carbohydrates that are processed and have a ton of bad oils in them, the sunflower, the safflower, the soybean, it's just like grapeseed. It's just laced with seed oils, which most foods are and most restaurants are cooking in. That can take a toll.
These are industrial oils.
Yes.
Like literally, and I'm saying industrial, like for your lawnmower. Like these are industrial oils that we're putting into our body, and for some reason are available to us to consume.
Right. Cheap.
Yep.
Right. Restaurants use them. They're cheap and easy. Yep. And you got to be careful too, because you can go think you're getting a quality olive oil or whatever, and it's like laced with seed oil. So you got to sort of know your sources when it comes to that. Yep. I just started cooking in tallow. I highly recommend it. It is like very neutral taste wise, so you don't even know. And it's great for high heats. I mean, most saturated fats are. So I think, diet wise, I think a balanced diet is great. I think, people that get into low carb and carnivore, it can really be a positive benefit. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I just think that, like, long term, variety is important, and sustainability, doing something that diet over a long period of time is important. So, like, if you're only going to do something for a little bit, that's fine. But, like, if you're having gut issues, right, and you can't take vegetables in, and it's just like having trouble digesting them, maybe initially, doing some type of an elimination diet's not a bad thing. And that's why I think a lot of people have sort of thrived on like this carnivore diet. Yep. But I just think in the long term, introducing whole food carbohydrates, I think, can help performance, and I think is better as far as just like you being able to oxidize glucose as in carbs as opposed to just oxidizing like fats. So
what I'm hearing too is there's a mindfulness aspect that can't be ignored, and if we were mindful about every single thing we put into ourselves, if there was intention, and that sounds like it could be a pain in the butt to set up and to figure out. Well, that's okay. It's just like the habit thing that you were talking about. Once you kind of do it, just like after day 2, once you get through day 2, you're fine. You start getting intentional about what you're putting in your body for a couple weeks. Like, what if every single person, as they were eating for 2 weeks, just for 2 weeks, before they ate it, they actually thought about it. They got mindful about it. What am I putting into my body? What is it going to do for me? what is it going to do against me? What is it going to, the pros, the cons, all of that. Why am I doing this? And you did that about everything. I think adding some mindfulness to this, just some good old fashioned thought, also is a huge part of it. And I think that we're in such a culture that is so fast paced and rushed and go from here to here to here to here to fast, autopilot. We don't even think about this stuff anymore. And it feels like a big part of when you're helping someone transform and go on their journey, mindfulness is a huge part of that.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point, and we talked about recording workouts. Well, I do think it's important to sort of record and journal what you're eating, at least for a week or two.
Yeah.
Just to sort of know and understand like what you're putting in your body. Because a lot of times people eat and they don't even know what they're putting in their body.
Exactly.
And so that goes, to your point, Mike. Yeah, like mindfulness eating. Great. I mean, I love that. I mean, I think that's important. And I think that's a good place to start, and not think that there has to be a certain special diet, but okay, like how is this serving me? And I don't think it's about being perfect as well. Like I eat stuff that's probably not the best every once in a while, but like, I think the key is like 80, I know it's like whatever, 80-20, right? Like I would say maybe if initially starting out, you want to go all in, then you're like 100% all in. But like once you get to the point, like for myself, I know that if I have, if my wife makes cookies and I eat a cookie or two, whatever, like I'm getting back into my routine the next day anyways.
Yeah.
I think sometimes
there's room in there for that. There's room in there for deviation from the perfection.
There's room for deviation. And I know that I'll have no issue getting back to my normal habits. Now, for someone that is just starting out, maybe getting off the rails a little bit, they shouldn't do right away initially. Mm-hmm. They should just that's why a coach comes into play, where they can sort of hold them accountable, make sure that they're not falling off the rails.
That's a great point. And I want to ask that with your clients, do you ever, are you a coach that, again, for the right person or whatever, are you a coach that encourages cheat days?
I don't like to say cheat days, but like, I mean, if there's something that they really like and they want to eat that, I think that's fine. I think if it's something that's occurring every day or every night, So
I've heard some trainers say, you know what, on day 7 or day 14. Go for it, whatever you want, kind of a thing. Like I've heard of that before. Is that something that you subscribe to?
I won't say that like I necessarily have told that to clients. Maybe I just haven't run into that quite yet, or they haven't even asked me. But like, that might be that's the thing that might work for some people, right? If they're like, oh, I'll be right on point for 6 days, and that as long as I know that 7th day I can sort of go off the rails, and if that works for that person, I think that's fine. But for some people, that 7th day might turn into that next day, and it sort of snowballs. So I think that's where you just got to sort of be careful and mindful of the person and how it might affect them.
Yeah, those habits, I mean, it's so deviating. Like I know people who work out religiously 5-6 months, they go on one vacation and they come back and they can't get into it again.
Right.
They because they break that cycle, and you got to be so careful. And again, it's that mindfulness, right? You got to think about it, but breaking the cycle can sometimes really break the cycle. Brian, I really appreciate you letting me pick your brain here for this hour. As you know, with podcasts, time gets slippery.
No, this was great. I haven't been a guest on it in a while, and I'm like, wow, this is not that easy.
So, it is though. No, because you're obviously an expert in what it is that you do. I mean, you've got answers for everything. Yeah.
Well, you were great, Mike. You're a great interviewer. So.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. You know what? We made a decision really early on that it wasn't going to be an interview style podcast. It was going to be a conversation. Lots of back and forth. Everyone can just kind of go off and be themselves in whatever they want, and kind of. So it isn't just the. It's the back and forth, and that's a style choice that we made. So, but I do want to. Do you do remote work with clients? And if so, like I want to make sure we publicize you and get you out there. So let's go over what is the best way to get a hold of you, Brian.
Yeah, briangryn.com is the best.
Gryn,
Yeah.
bryn.com,
Yeah.
BRIANGR.
Yeah. It gets so
Yep. Yep.
BRINGRYN.com. And yeah, that's everything's going to be there. I have a book called The Stepladder System. So you can go to thestepladdersystem.com and you can get it in a PDF format, or if you want it in the book format, it's on Amazon and things like that. But yeah, that just goes through my program. And, if they go on my website and they want to do a 10-15 minute consult and just chat, well, I do plenty of those. So
Yeah, the step ladder. How did you enjoy the process of writing a book? My wife and I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and boy, did we learn a lot about ourselves
well,
in doing it.
well, let me tell you, I got some help. I needed
Yeah,
some help.
yeah.
I wrote a kid's book years ago, which was really fun. I just did that as like a fun thing. I have nieces. I
Yeah.
don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews, and they were characters in the book. It's called The Magic Zoo. So that was really fun.
The
Uh,
Magic Zoo, is it still available as
oh
well?
yeah, it's still
Right
available.
on.
And so that was fun. I will tell anyone, if they want to feel like a rock star, just write a kid's book and then just do like a tour of like elementary schools, and you'll feel like LeBron James for like a year, just like signing autographs and kissing babies and things like that.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
And the step ladder, the step
Yeah,
ladder.
the step ladder system. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a process for sure. But I got help because I can write a kid's book, but writing an adult book is that's just not as easy to do. So
Well, I'm very, very glad that you're in this world. I'm glad that you're helping to make people's lives better. I'm gonna do a real quick outro here, but please stay on so we can say our goodbye privately, if that's all right.
sure.
Awesome. That's why we do the show, everybody. And I say that every time because, every single one of these conversations that we have brings up more glimpses, more little secrets, more life hacks, more ways that we can improve the situation as to where we are right now. Food for thought. And that thought, if we can attach that thought to an action of some sort, we can improve our lives. And that's the whole goal of this thing. If you haven't downloaded the HeChangedIt app, what the heck are you waiting for? Head on over to HeChangedIt.com. The entire mission of the company is there. The app is there for whatever technological persuasion that you have, be it the Apple, be it the Android, whatever. We got a place for you. Download the HeChangedIt app. Be a part of what is the evolution of something that we want, a movement that we want to, change the world. We want to make the world a better place. Men's mental wellness, whatever that is, physical wellness, of course, having a huge, huge part about that. We are really excited that Brian Gryn has taken time out of his schedule to let us pick his brain today. That has been another episode of HeCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. Go change something.